Alright, so for this episode of HopCast, I'm going out of my comfort zone.
We're getting wild, baby!
Right. First off, I'm Chmielewski.
My name is Hunnemeder.
And I'm Charlie Drew.
Back again.
Rex and Effects.
He heard we were getting wild.
Yep, that's right.
He showed up.
And I said, I got something wild. I'm gonna bring something wild. He's got something wild. We'll do a wild episode.
Yeah.
We'll combine our wild ability.
Wild and ability.
Alright.
But basically, we're gonna do some wild ales for you tonight. And basically what a wild ale is using a beer that's using wild yeast. What is a wild yeast, you may ask?
Yeah.
A wild yeast is basically, something that hasn't been it's a yeast that hasn't been kept in like a sterile environment. It actually has bacteria in it, which imparts, these off sour, earthy, funky tones to the beer. So
It's kind of disgusting.
well, to some and most maybe yes, but there's a select few out there.
Germs.
If I can go into a bit of beer history at this juncture. These days, when breweries make beer, they carefully cultivate their yeast. Each brewery has their own yeast strains that they maintain over the years, and they'll stir it up in an Erlenmeyer flask and get it all ready, and everything's super sterile, super controlled.
They're being careful, right?
Yeah.
Gloves.
And so that's the absolute opposite of wild. I mean, that's a very carefully controlled yeast. They know exactly what they're using. Whereas these wild ales, it's basically they leave things open and they let the yeast come in naturally. And that's the way it was done in ancient times. I mean, in the Middle Ages when monks were brewing beer, they didn't even know yeast existed because science hadn't progressed to the point where they could see yeast. They didn't have microscopes. They had no idea what yeast was. So they didn't know what was doing the fermentation. They would just, they'd brew their beer and they had these big open containers that they were brewing in. And the yeast there's yeast naturally floating around in the air all over the place, and it would find its way in there and it would start the fermentation process. And as Ken said, it's like this crazy, wild, bacteria-laden yeast that ends up producing all these weird flavors. And actually, the original, the beer purity law, the German beer purity law, the Reinheitsgebot,
1560.
that the original version, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, it specified that the ingredients of beer would be water, malt, and hops, because I believe when they wrote the law, they didn't yet know that yeast existed. And now it's generally accepted that the Reinheitsgebot specifies water, water, malt, hops, and yeast. People think it specifies all four, but I think it might only specify the three because they didn't even know about yeast then. And so they were just using wild yeast at that point.
So really now they got drunk and decided to brew and see what happens.
Yeah, and these days they don't have to do it the wild way, but they're like, fuck it, man, let's brew some wild things. Let's have the bacteria get in there and make some crazy, funky flavors. Let's do it.
Guys, hop in. It's hot time.
So nowadays, it certainly happens where they sometimes ferment with open fermenters, but it's not always the case. They can just introduce that wild bacteria into it in a closed environment. It certainly does happen. I know a few beers that do it. One of them, I believe, is the New Glarus Belgian Red. Their Cherry Creek is open fermented, but can't be certain about either one of these two. But
I would think that Russian River guy, what's his name?
Vinny,
I think he's precise.
he might be enclosed. Okay.
So he's probably, so I guess what we're saying is rather than, it's not truly like Brettanomyces yeast floating around in the air and finding its way in. They're purposely injecting it, but it's just that they're using a
So it is
type of yeast that's not normally used. But they're probably using modern techniques.
and so it is somewhat controlled, even though it's a wild ale.
And then I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Brettanomyces yeast, it has sort of a mind of its own, and it can apparently spread throughout a brewery very, very quickly.
Sort of like the swine flu.
And I guess it's winemakers, vintners, are terrified of Brettanomyces yeast because I guess it produces horrible wine, which I guess makes sense. Sort of funky barnyard tasting wine doesn't sound good.
You wouldn't want that. Would be
And
weird.
so I've read that winemakers won't even visit a brewery that uses Brettanomyces yeast because they're afraid that it will like get on their clothes or on their skin, and they'll transport it back to their facility, and it will like take off there and it'll run wild and it'll find its way into their product. That's how careful they are. They won't even go where they know Brettanomyces is. They'll stay away from it because apparently it's very hardy and it doesn't die. It stays alive even on clothing or skin.
Yeah, even when you bleach it, I think sometimes it like stays there.
It's nuts.
Let's get to drinking here.
Nah,
We got.
I'm done.
I kind of want to talk all night.
We can talk and drink.
Beer's overrated. Let's just talk.
So we're gonna start with the Avery, and we had this recently at the Publican,
We did.
right? So
Just the other night.
So if you haven't read the Publican article on the HopCast, definitely check it out. This was Ken's final beer of the night. He finally manned up and got something that wasn't.
After my Alpha King and my Duvel, I branched out and had a Brabant. As we decided to pronounce it, we're not really sure.
Bourbon?
Brabant.
I'm gonna guess Brabant, but we don't know.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and pour out the Avery.
So that poured out with a decent amount of head. Our head kind of grows as we we got a little more pour happy.
I didn't think it'd be this dark.
It's a very dark beer. It almost has like some cherry quality in the aroma.
Yeah. Is that the sweet? Because I think this one was aged in oak, right?
I believe it was. Or was it
Bourbon?
No, I think it was
Zinfandel. Zinfandel, yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was aged in Zinfandel barrel. But I think those are probably made of oak.
They may be, but like you have those vinegary Zinfandel notes.
That might
Imparted in
contribute
there.
to the dark color. Some of
Which
the.
is this is the only beer I've had aged in Zinfandel. Like I haven't. Seen
I've
that.
never heard of another
That's
beer.
weird. That's a weird one. Like I'll take those Zinfandel barrels.
I mean, if it's gonna be a beer, it probably makes sense. It's gonna be like a wild sour ale. It's gonna be, aged in Zinfandel.
I guess I'll admit I don't know enough about wine to know really what Zinfandel tastes like.
Well, it's not a white Zinfandel.
Sweet, like where is it?
No, but it's not it's probably like a black Zinfandel or a dark Zinfandel, like the regular straight up Zinfandel.
Right.
Not
I guess
the
they're not
white
aging. The whites aren't aged, right?
I wouldn't think no,
Okay.
but because you can get like
It's not the wine cast.
it's a red wine, but it's a Zinfandel. It's probably aged in one of those.
Okay.
So
Nice Chmielewski cherry fruitness.
yeah.
Now, this is a sour I can get behind. It's not like so sour where you're like, oh my god, that's a sour beer. It's just like there's something funny going on.
It's a little
Something
funky.
funny going on.
There's something funny. Little funky, little tart. I wouldn't say overly sour.
Yeah.
A lot of earthy qualities going on in it. But it's just like it's very well rounded.
Yeah, I wouldn't say sour at all. Just definitely a little tart.
I guess this is almost on the lambic to sour side. Maybe that's why I like it because it has that fruity lambic quality, but then kind of sour.
But it's like the lambic is a pretty broad category. So you can have your like really sweet lambics, and you can have your super sour lambics.
Maybe I'm only in the
As Ken and I learned at the fantastic Lambic Festival hosted at Delilah's, an incredible beer bar in Chicago. Shout out. Sorry, I just wanted to give a shout out.
No, I thought you were gonna keep going.
Lambics they don't have that earthiness, that funkiness to them generally. So
I guess
I'm not getting.
I guess that I'm just saying this is the easing into it, like coming from the lambic side. This is like a good beer to go to it, because you definitely don't just like go into the sour beers.
No.
Just like the Belgian beers kind of get you to go elsewhere, where this would be a great one to like. See what the sour side is all about.
I guess I wouldn't even put this in the category of sour beers. This is just like a little bit tart to me. I don't even think it's sour because I don't know. I think of the Brett beers as being that's the shorthand, and for beer dorks is the Brettanomyces beers. Brettanomyces is just called Brett
Nerd
beers.
alert.
Yeah, that's us. But I don't think of them as being sour. I just think of them as being more funky and more barnyard than sour. But really, I don't feel that sour at all.
But it has a sour aroma.
Brad's very sensitive to anything the slightest bit sour.
No, it is a little tart, but like, yeah, I get that earthy funkiness more so than a sour quality.
Yeah.
Alright. Fine. But I think this is really good beer.
Yeah, but that's why you like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with sour beers is I can't pick up the other things in it, which maybe
You're
that
overwhelmed by
the
sour.
sour, which maybe that's the point.
Are you getting any barnyards?
We'll just associate that with the sour. So we're gonna move on to another wild ale, and we have to give a huge shout out to the guys over at Suds Or Duds for this one. Shout out! We did a beer trade with them, sent them some Two Brother, Brooklyn, New Glarus, and they sent us back this.
Very nice.
And this is Russian River's Wild Ale.
You know, the beatification. So,
Which sounds dirty.
I'm glad you mentioned it. But this one, as we were mentioning the Brettanomyces before with the other beer, this one actually, we saw it has 4 different strands of wild
Do
yeast.
more from memory.
Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, Pedocilius, and the other one.
Pediococcus, close.
Pediococcus.
And Saccharomyces.
And then this is barrel aged in oak barrels for like, what does it say, 8 to 15 months?
And it's also a blended beer. They actually make a beer specifically to blend with this that they would never release into the public.
Which
just to
it was almost like they're blonde, right?
So, yeah. Like I gather it's more like a generic type of thing that they can kind of just blend with it to either, they say in some cases, mellow out things, or in even certain cases, make it even more sour. So
there's a
kind
lot
of interesting.
There's a lot of science going
Yeah,
on.
right.
That poured out pretty nice, but before I even get into the pour, the sour is just like all over. It's wafty. It's just,
Oh yeah.
it's this evil cloud of stink.
You mean beautiful cloud.
Yeah, this luscious cloud of sharp, sour.
But that poured out
deliciousness.
almost like if you saw the episode of the Hefeweizen, what was that?
We remember way back
The
then.
Blue Frog Hefeweizen.
Right.
It poured out almost like that.
Yeah, like a cloudy yellow, and
Well,
it actually has some specks of the yeast in the head. Like the yeast got kind of out of control under pressure in the bottle there and kind of escaped.
it's wild.
You notice it sort of foamed over a little bit. There's a puddle of beer on the table, and there's a little blotch of bright orange yeast in the middle of the puddle of beer on the table.
You can't control that.
That's the wild yeast. When it jumps out of the bottle onto the table and there's just yeast floating around on the table. That's
If
crazy.
you're familiar, like the yeast, it resides at the bottom of the bottle. So how it got all the way up there and
It went
I
out.
That's a great one.
So we had not a lot of head, which I guess.
Well, it all
right,
foamed
right,
out.
Yeah. There's really no hops in here to keep it in.
not too many.
So,
Not too many of the hoppies.
but
Not a hot beer.
So let's go ahead. It's very sour. And,
Yeah, this one's not just tart. This one's sour.
but it's like it's a grassy sour, I think. Like a really earthy, grassy sour. And
it's not a pucker your mouth sour. It's like a tongue. I don't know. It's just not like a Sour Patch Kid sour.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I think
I think it is like a Sour Patch Kids sour.
No, it's
I
not
think-
like a pucker your cheeks.
I
It's like,
feel a little bit
It's
that
like
here.
up front more.
I think the La Folie from New Belgium was much more puckering.
Oh yeah.
But this one may be more sour than that, but like in a mellower way.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that makes any sense, I'm not sure.
No, it does. It's not as puckery.
It's a weird feeling after drinking all night, and then this beer is like bottom of the mouth, like.
We haven't been drinking all night.
What do you like? Film multiple episodes in one day or something? Come on. Oh. And I think what's really interesting about this beer is the mouthfeel. It's you can really feel the carbonation. It feels like champagne on your tongue. It feels like you can feel the bubbles a little bit.
Yeah. Champagne. Champagne.
It's a very delicate beer in that sense.
Now some of these like wild yeast.
You watch 3 Sheets, you know, champagne. Shut up! Say watch our show!
Some of these wild yeasts give off like a really effervescent carbonation to it, because these are double fermented in the bottle to
check his ID.
double fermented in the bottle to produce its carbonation. So the yeast is what really is responsible for that.
I think effervescence is a very good word for this one.
For sure.
I think if you can get past a sour, you almost get that little bit of oak barrel age to it, like in the finish a little bit.
No, I think you're right. Like maybe before I was referring to it as earthiness, but I think maybe it's more woodiness than earthiness.
This one doesn't have as much barnyard as the other one. I think it just skews more in the sour direction than the barnyard direction.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I guess there are different types of Brettanomyces yeast. I think the previous one, the Avery beer, I believe it said used 2 different types of Brettanomyces. I didn't know that until I read that on the bottle. There were different varieties. So, wild ales, they might all use different wild yeasts, and they might even use all use Brettanomyces, but that doesn't mean they're going to be the same. There's still variation within that. So. And this is obviously, as Ken said, not just Brettanomyces as the other ones. So this is a totally different character than the Avery beer.
Yeah, and it gets back to what you were saying about like the different science that goes into brewing something like this. Where there's 4 different types of yeast, and they're all wild, and they're blended, and they're like.
This was thought out.
Yeah.
There was planning.
I'm guessing they probably had a lot of batches that they threw out along the way to arriving at this.
They didn't fart in a fermenter and it came out,
And it's only coming in at 5.75%, so pretty low for the HopCast scale. But like a session beer,
but it's so crazy flavorful
that it can't be a session beer, right?
Well, no.
I guess it could be.
Would be for me.
You wouldn't. Most people wouldn't drink this. Like, give me another pint. Give me another pint.
It's just that usually you don't get that much flavor out of something that's that low in alcohol, and that's one of the beauties of this beer.
I believe the Avery came in around there too. I'm sure.
Also low, yeah.
A touch stronger, but not crazy strong.
Really interesting that they can get so much flavor out of a low alcohol, which is always awesome to see that the alcohol isn't needed to get something so flavorful.
Right. For sure. So these beers are certainly not for everyone, but strongly recommend giving them a shot if you ever can get your hands on especially for instance, this Russian River is not available to us per se in Chicago.
Right, Suds Or Duds guys. Shout out to them again.
It's kind of a hard beer to come across, which is really cool. Thank you guys for sending it over. But usually in whatever market you're in, you can find at least a local something or something that's distributed to you that's a wild ale or something that's used with wild yeast.
And if you see any, if you're at the liquor store and you're in the Belgian section, you're looking at Belgian beers in your local good liquor store. Any Flemish beers. Flemish beers tend to be sour. It's like a subsection of Belgian beers. So those tend to be sour. So that's the place you can turn if you want to give something a try. Or any lambics or gooses, they'll be sour. So you can probably find something at your local store.
Sure.
Not at your local Jewel, but at your local good liquor store, you can probably find something.
Wherever you picked up your Okachim, they probably don't have it.
Oh, sorry.
So these are we're gonna be drinking these for a while. You got me more so than you guys.
I'll finish this.
I'm about done.
But thanks for
Couple more
joining us.
sips.
Thanks for joining another episode of HopCast. Wild Ales.
Thanks for getting sour and silly with us.
It's wild!